Well, the time is just gone 9:55 a.m. as we continue with the discussion. And our last discussion this morning is focused on property tax evaluation. Now, essentially, these are your rates and taxes that you get from the municipality, and which is what you pay on a monthly basis. The key issue is how much do we know about property taxes in terms of how these are calculated, and also looking at the valuation of our property. All of these things matter at the end of the day, and there are still a number of other issues and factors that we need to know about. And in many instances, this is information that we don't take seriously, and this is the reason why we are talking this morning with the executive manager for social services at the organization undoing tax abuse, Julius Kleynhans. Julius, good morning to you, and welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure. Good morning.
Yes, one area that, and I'm sure that there are many people that don't pay a lot of attention to is, and they just accept readily what comes through from the local municipality. You get your rates bill, and you go ahead, pay your bill. But how much do we really know in terms of these taxes, how they are calculated? How much do we know about the valuation of our property? And we find that this can become problematic for many a property owner, or even a household.
Absolutely. I don't think people really understand it. When you hear about the general valuation role, it goes over people's heads. They don't understand what that means. And this is really where a municipality looks and analyzes your property value. Now, it's based on a willing buyer, willing seller principle. This year's valuation, as an example, in the city of Johannesburg, was based on July 2022, what a property would have sold for in that market. Now, people don't understand that it's their right to go and look what the city has valued it at. Remember, the city makes money out of this, and it's based on a tax. So this income basically goes in the general pot of municipal administration to deliver a variety of services. It's not necessarily to only ensure that your community is kept intact. It can vary from anything of maintaining parks and sidewalks, and whether it's social upliftment projects in the municipality. That's basically a general tax that we all have to pay as property owners. But the problem is that the methodologies that these municipalities use mostly focuses on a helicopter view. And again, on the principle, an example of the city of Johannesburg, there's 950,000 properties that's affected. So it's impossible for the city to go and evaluate each property on value. But then they'll take a helicopter view and they do a guesstimate. And this is so fundamentally flawed, because we found that some households or properties have increased at the rate of 60%. Now, the city charges you your rates based on that valuation, and also based on the tariff increase that occurs every year. And, a lot of people, unfortunately, is going to get a very big surprise this month.
Well, definitely. But also, I think, we are obviously talking not only about homes, we're not talking about domestic property, we're talking about property right across the board, whether it's agricultural, commercial, whatever it is. At the end of the day, all of it is impacted in some way or the other. And as you mentioned, is they take this aerial view as far as properties are concerned, property valuations. And the key issue here is, there are a number of issues. There are market values. There are other factors that actually play around. We've even seen property values actually coming down over a period of time. And yet, on the other side, you would see this increase as far as your rates are concerned when property values have actually come down, Julius.
100%. That's a fundamental issue. If you look at municipalities not performing, and I'm going to use city of Johannesburg as a good example. The services are, the cost of it's getting higher every year. Yet you see that the quality of service is deteriorating. Infrastructure is starting to fall apart. In fact, water interruptions in the city is becoming as the norm, like any load shedding issues that we've seen in the past. So you cannot drive an economy and run a business like that, never mind a household. And And we've seen property rates according to Lightstone that actually has these metrics. Property value has decreased in the city. In fact, in the beginning of this year, it was minus 0.1. So whilst the city applies increases, property rates aren't selling for that price. So in fact, because of the bad service delivery, the market is not good. People are leaving the city, those who can afford to, and they're investing in other municipalities that can actually ensure that property value and asset value is intact. So it's not sustainable, and in the same breath, tariffs are increasing exorbitantly as well, whether from bulk suppliers or the city itself. And as I've mentioned, it's just not sustainable. At the end of the day, the social relief element to it gets higher, and the rates base is getting lower. So we have to look at municipalities in a different way, because the current business model is not working now, and it's not going to be working in the future.
Well, besides just looking at municipalities in a different way, these are taxes that we are talking about. It is a form of tax. It is income generation on the part of local authorities and municipalities. And this is what OUTA is all about. It's an organization undoing tax abuse and abuse, even in terms of levying the taxes. These are important issues, and levying a tax like a property tax to property owners, Julius.
Yeah, it's. I think there's no problem of anyone paying for something and they're getting a service in return. I think South Africans in general have no problem of paying for something, but that's the thing. You need to see the value of your money being spent. Unfortunately, the property rates is under its own act, and the minister of COCTA also should be playing a role in almost regulating fair increases in that space. We've seen some municipalities increasing above CPI, and one has to take into consideration when you're talking about property rates, it needs to be in the property inflation rate in that current municipality, if you put it like that. So some municipalities, the property values increase because things are going well. But funny enough, in Cape Town, which we all know, the property values are excessive at the moment because of the value of the asset. The property rates are actually reducing. I think they've applied a minus 1% on that. So look, I think it's a very competitive environment. I think the thought of a tax and the tariffs are noble cause, but it should be charged at a cost of service rendered, and currently we don't see that. So it's highly questionable whether people are getting any bang for buck at the moment. In fact, I believe that municipalities need to start looking at cutting costs, reducing rates and tariffs, and looking at alternative solutions like households providing electricity, for instance, and selling it back to the municipality, and through that kind of methods reducing the cost of living in our communities. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in ways thinking differently, but I don't believe that those governing in our municipalities currently has that appetite. And the administration also needs to account for proper performance, because we don't see that accountability taking place either.
Julius, just looking at it from a ratepayer's perspective, and someone who is paying his or her property rates and taxes, and is there opportunity for recourse to question valuations, to question the taxes that you are paying?
No, absolutely. I think we have to participate in the legislative spaces of public participation. For instance, with this general valuation on property rates, if it's applied in your municipality, you've got a specific time frame where you can look at the valuation on your property and object. It's your right. You can do that. Obviously, one has to be reasonable when objecting, because you are still paying a tax. But I think the future of municipalities really relies on how well communities are organized, and that's where the force of reckoning needs to come into play. Because currently, how it works is a municipal administration pulls up a budget, and the politicians dictate what happens. Those political parties don't account to the people, or they account to a political party. And as we've seen it in the past, it's almost like a career. If you want to climb the ladder, what value do you add to the party? So organized communities that are well structured, I think, is very important. Your ratepayers associations, community forums, and so on. And then bridging the gap, as you can see here behind me, just as a coincidence, between these organized communities. We have to start networking and work together with our neighboring communities as a collective, so we can address municipalities and hold them to account. Because there's no way that one residents association will be doing it on their own. And we cannot exclude marginalized communities, the ratepayers, between those who don't pay rates. We have to, as a collective, start addressing these issues. And I think one has to make it so very uncomfortable that politicians need to ask what their relevance is in the future of municipalities. A municipality's got a clear function. It's supposed to provide basic services. It doesn't have to create jobs. It's not its job. It's create the basic services and the infrastructure so that businesses can create the jobs. And then you create a good environment and economy where you create more ratepayers that can contribute to the pool. And, that's how municipalities can thrive.
Yes, and interesting you speak about politicians, and politicians will be politicians. But sadly, at local government level, when one looks at your local councillors, for instance, as well, where the party line takes preference over service delivery, and we've seen this over and over again. And when we're talking about service delivery, attending to your property taxes, evaluating how much you're paying, what is your valuation of property. This is information that many of these councillors need to have in hand. And sadly, they don't have it. But even more sadly, like you mentioned, it requires a unified, a coordinated approach to these representatives, or your or my representatives at local government level, to take these matters and firstly for them to gain an understanding as to how the mechanism works, but more importantly to do something for the people that you are representing.
You're absolutely right. And I think there are a lot of good councillors out there, but the political dynamics in the municipalities just make it unbearable. Some of them cannot do exactly what you just said, take up the information, the issues to the council so that they can address it. I think the clear distinction between council and administration, whether it's applied in law and whether it's practically applied in our day-to-day lives, are very different. Political meddling is so evident. Every time a mayor changes office, you see that the budget and the administration follows, and you cannot run a municipality like that. So I think organized communities should have such a strong voice that you don't necessarily have to go to litigate and force a municipality to do their jobs. But also, it needs to be such a force to reckon with that the council doesn't have a choice but to listen and obey, because they are public servants, and we need to get them back to that point. Because that's not the case. Just for interest's sake, if you go to the voting stations in a local government election, you're voting for a party, and they put a candidate forward that you have to vote for, and no one knows who this person is. That's what the party puts forward. But in a ratepayers association environment, in a community environment, the people have elected a committee and a chairperson, and those are the people they trust. They know where they live. They form part of the community, and they're the leaders that the people have elected. And I think future of local government must be exactly that. It must be the people that the community has put forward, that they know and can hold it to account. And I almost believe that the independent councillor and that kind of methods might just be the future, because if organized communities are sustainable and well enough networked, it doesn't matter who comes into power, that services will be rendered because of the community being so well organized. And I think, that might even influence who will be elected in local elections going forward.
Well, Julius, thank you very much for that. Unfortunately, time is of the essence, but we're going to have to leave it at that. But we do appreciate you taking time out this morning, talking to us right here on Salam Media. All the best to you.
All the best, and it's always a pleasure. Thank you. Have a good day.
Julius Kleynhans with us, executive manager for social innovation at the organization doing undoing tax abuse on your property rates and taxes, just to give you some sort of an insight as to how this actually works. And with that, I'm going to be signing off. Next up, Juice 18 by Sheikh Yasin Al Dosari. So from myself and the team, until we meet tomorrow, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.